Introduction. When I began to write this story, the world had little concern about the new millennium. We were smack dab in the middle of the 20th century. Now, on the eve of the 21st, much of our news concerns how the wheels of the great industrial complex that my generation created are going to be able to turn over some small digits. And here am I, at age 82, in what the doctors term good health, in spite of the fact that cancer has plagued me for years. My sunny window looks out at the beautiful landscaping of the Vineyard Retirement Center, where I hope to spend my last days. Most of the red and yellow leaves have fallen. The barren trees tell me that the time is short. And I am still writing that story and wondering why it has taken me so long. Of course, there were periods in my life when I did very little writing. I was busy with children, my own 3 various nieces and nephews, exchange students, and more than a dozen foster girls. I intended to give them a life which was, to use the popular expression, as unlike my own childhood as possible. I hoped they could avoid the pitfalls that assailed me until an April day, after the death of my twin daughters, when I had found a new direction. At times my mind tells me, "Oh, you exaggerate the pitfalls," and yet I am convinced that these pitfalls sent my older sister to her grave in what should have been the prime of her life, leaving behind her 2 daughters with that eternal question, why? And my younger sister into an unfortunate early marriage, followed by more failed marriages. And although she was finally able to live a productive life, she died on the eve of a long-awaited retirement and left her 2 children with irreconcilable differences. There have been several occasions when I termed my manuscript finished, and yet, though the chapters were titled and the pages numbered, I was still not satisfied. Perhaps the biggest obstacle was that I was never able to decide if our life was a comedy or a tragedy, which probably stems from the volatility of my father's personality. One day, it was deep gloom, and the next, it was as if the heavens were open, ready to shower blessings upon us. After my sons and grandsons had moved me into my new home and hooked up the wires, I sat down at my computer, so different from the little portable typewriter I began on. It was not hard to imagine the characters of my story sitting at the sunny window beside me, my father, mother, and 2 sisters, Florence and Dorothy. "These modern-day inventions," they'd say, "and you can actually operate it?" My family always had the idea that they were the motivational force behind everything that I ever did. "Franny can't even keep her shoelaces tied," they'd exclaim. They would no doubt be surprised at the range of my current activities, still busy at music, playing piano and accordion at senior centers, retirement centers, nursing homes, weddings, anniversaries, funerals, back to college, more writing classes, more awards. But of all my activities, the biggest surprise, except for the fact that I've outlived them by so many years, would be the contest. It was not the actual act of entering a competition that would surprise them. Most of our young lives were spent competing, swimming races, skiing races, music contests. Even after retirement, I had entered golf tournaments and won trophies. Their surprise, instead, would be at the type of contest I had entered. You in a beauty contest. Of the 3 Bigham girls, I was considered the least beautiful. I try to clarify it. Well, when I was asked to represent the local senior center at the county fair, that's what Pat Kennedy, the activity director, had defined it as. Kind of a glorified beauty contest. I had replied, "Kind of? What else do I have to do besides look beautiful?" Which I'm not. You have to appear on stage with contestants from 8 other senior centers and answer several prepared questions about your life. But your last question will be spontaneous. I had misgivings. While I was not what my family considered a beauty, I realized that my years of appearing before an audience might give me an advantage. On the other hand, I now had a disability that might hinder me considerably, maybe completely. 2 years before, the doctor had given me the ultimatum: it's your voice or your life, one or the other. I had heard the message before. During the last 40 years, I had undergone a dozen operations on my throat. Even though I had known that the loss of my voice was inevitable, I was still finding it hard to agree to the final step. My voice, my singing, had been my life. But an even greater sorrow was in store for me that day. My husband of 52 years, on his way to the hospital to give me the courage to make the final decision, had fallen down the stairs and cracked his skull. A month later, he died. 2 weeks after his death, I underwent the operation that removed my vocal cords and left me voiceless. My method of communication from then on was a 5-inch, handheld, battery-powered cylinder. It was a curse or a blessing, whichever way I chose to look at it. But no matter what I chose, my voice was not pretty, not always reliable, and many people couldn't understand me, or simply wouldn't make the effort. But perhaps the biggest obstacle to participating in a contest where speaking was the main requirement was that I could easily be overcome with a coughing spasm caused by fumes or a chill. But then, I reasoned, well, we'll be outside and that should eliminate most fumes. And besides, it will be in the middle of summer. No chills. The day of the beauty contest, however, turned out like many other big occasions of my life. The rain poured down. My family's stock observation would have been, it must have been a Wednesday. The outdoor stage flooded. The public address system shorted out. The officials moved us to another smaller stage 6 blocks across the fields, on the other side of the fairgrounds. The bus bogged down in the mud. We ended up walking, setting up the stage, and going on with the contest. Of all the rain-drenched contestants, I was the last to speak. There in the rain, I told about being taught determination by my father, who had never seen or heard of an activity to which he didn't proclaim, "By God, my kids are going to learn to do that." Then the master of ceremonies asked me, "What advice would you give to the young people of today?" I paused for a moment, thinking of all the children I had talked to since my operation. In the park, on the street, in the supermarket, in Sunday school classes, in schools. I had come to think of it as my new mission. It had come about so naturally. Nary a child hears my mechanical voice but what he isn't immediately attracted, and mystified. Who is this person? A being from outer space? I take this as an opportunity to ask, do you wonder why I speak in this funny way? Their reactions are varied. I explain in a sentence about my operation. I let them try out my speaking device and experience the vibrations in their throat. They laugh. It tickles. My next question is somewhat of a surprise, considering that the children may range in age from teenagers down to toddlers. Do you smoke cigarettes? The reactions, of course, are varied. I love looking into the big, innocent eyes of the little ones as they shake their heads. Then I take the opportunity to explain how important it is to live a clean life, to steer clear of the things that would entangle them. The master of ceremonies is waiting. I press the button on my device and began my answer. I would tell the young people of today, don't carry your voice around in your pocket. I can see the puzzlement on the dripping faces of the audience. I know they are getting the message. Know what you believe. Be prepared to speak. Then I told them of the day that I had stopped at a roadside flower stand, and when the lone woman clerk approached, I was unprepared. My voice was in my pocket. I fumbled, finally pulling it out. But the poor distraught woman thought I had a gun and held up her hands. In closing, I repeated what I have said to so many children. Don't cry about what you don't have. Learn to use what you have. And remember that God loves you and has a plan for your life. And with that, I would announce to my sisters, I was crowned, my fair lady of Clackamas County.